The indigenous tribes of the northern Urals call it Kholat Syakhl, Dead Mountain. For generations, they refused to set foot on its frozen slopes, quietly warning that the mountain did not welcome visitors. In February 1959, 9 of Russia's most resilient mountaineers ignored that warning. They pitched their tent near the summit, cooked dinner, and wrote jokes in their journals. It was a perfectly normal night. Until midnight. That's when something approached the camp. Something that terrified these hardened veterans so badly, they destroyed their own shelter to escape it, walking barefoot into the lethal freezing dark. The thing that hunted them left absolutely no footprints in the snow, but it left a horrifying, radioactive signature inside their bodies. Imagine you are standing on a slope in Russia's northern Ural Mountains. It's February 26, 1959. You're part of the search party. You've been moving through these frozen highlands for days. Fingers numb, breath turning to ghost smoke the second it leaves your lips. You've been out here long enough that you've stopped expecting to find anything good, and then you see it. A tent. Half buried under snow. Listing to one side. Quiet. Too quiet. You call out. No answer. The wind answers instead. You move closer, and that's when you notice the first wrong thing. The tent hasn't been pushed open from the outside. It's been torn open from the inside. Long, deliberate cuts through the canvas. Made with knives. Not one panicked slash, multiple clean incisions. Like whoever was inside needed to get out through the wall rather than the door. Not quickly, deliberately, like they had just enough control left to do it carefully, inside the tent. Everything, boots, coats, food rations, cameras, the survival equipment that 9 of the most experienced winter mountaineers in the Soviet Union would never abandon in minus 30 degrees Celsius temperatures. Not on exposed slope. Not in the dark. Not if they had any choice. Outside. Footprints. 7, maybe 8 sets. Calm, even, orderly. Walking, not running. 1.5 kilometers downhill toward the tree line. 9. Hikers went in. 9 sets of prints walked out. Not one of them ever came back. Here is what I need you to understand before we go one step further. This is not a story about poor planning. This is not a story about inexperience or recklessness or bad luck. The Soviet government, a government that specialized in ironclad authoritative answers, a government that would rather invent an explanation than admit it didn't have one, could only summarize what happened on this mountain in a single sentence. The cause of death, an unknown, compelling force. That was their official conclusion. And then they classified the entire file for over 30 years. Seasoned detectives couldn't explain it. Forensic scientists couldn't explain it. And decades later, when the lead prosecutor on the case finally broke his silence, he didn't offer answers. He offered something far more disturbing. He offered an apology. That is the Dyatlov Pass incident. And once you understand what was actually found on that mountain, the internal injuries that physics says shouldn't exist, the body stripped bare in lethal cold, the radiation on the clothing, the glowing shapes in the sky that night, and the missing tongue, I promise you, you will not look at the night the same way. Again. In the Mansi language spoken by the indigenous people of the northern Urals, this mountain is called Kholat Syakhl, Dead Mountain. The Mansi had avoided it for generations, holding a quiet, unspoken belief that the mountain did not welcome visitors. They never explained further than that. Perhaps they felt no explanation was necessary. On January 23, 1959, 10 young students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute loaded onto a train in Sverdlovsk. They were heading north. Their goal, a Category 3 winter expedition, the highest difficulty classification in Soviet mountaineering, covering 190 miles across some of the most hostile terrain in Russia. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov, 23 years old. Brilliant, calm, and trusted absolutely by everyone who knew him. He had built his own expedition radio equipment from scratch. He was exactly the kind of person you follow into a dangerous place because, you know, that if anything goes wrong, he will find the way out. With him, Zinaida Kolmogorova, fierce and warm, privately in love with Igor. Rustem Slobodin, built like stone, steady in every condition. Yuri Doroshenko, easygoing, athletic. Yuri Krivonishenko, the one who played the mandolin around campfires, who worked, as a matter of note, at a classified Soviet nuclear installation called Mayak. Nikolay Thibeaux-Brignol, meticulous, methodical. Ludmila Dubinina, 20 years old, the youngest woman, who once skied 50 kilometers on an injured leg after being accidentally shot by a hunter, and arrived at the clinic asking if she could still make the expedition. She was not someone who panicked. And then there was Semyon Zolotaryov, 37 years old, a decorated World War II veteran, a certified ski instructor. He joined the group at the last minute in a way no one fully accounted for. Soviet-era intelligence researchers have since argued, with growing credibility, that Zolotaryov was almost certainly a KGB informant placed inside the group. One member, Yuri Yudin, turned back on January 28th. Severe joint pain forced him to abandon the expedition at the last outpost. He said goodbye to his friends on the trail. He was the only one of them who ever came home. He spent the next 54 years of his life trying to understand what killed them. By February 1st, the group had reached the slope of Kholat Syakhl. A severe snowstorm had descended. Visibility was near zero. Igor Dyatlov made a decision that has since been dissected endlessly. Rather than descend into the protected valley below, he chose to dig the tent into the exposed, open slope. A practical call. Better position for the morning. A manageable risk for a group of their experience. That night inside the tent, they cooked dinner. They wrote in their diaries. They even drafted a satirical joking camp newsletter they called Evening Otorten, with headlines mocking themselves and their expedition. The entries were warm, playful, completely, terrifyingly normal. That was their last night. When the search party reached the tent on February 26th, the scene was, in every measurable, rational sense, impossible. The inside cuts, the abandoned gear, and those footprints, 7 or 8 sets, leading calmly downhill through killing cold, made by people wearing socks or nothing at all. 1.5 kilometers to the tree line, to a large, solitary cedar tree. The first 2 bodies were beneath it. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Kriv on ISCHENK. In their underwear. Barefoot. In -30 degrees Celsius. Wind. Near them, the remnants of a small fire. Krivonishenko's hands bore severe burn damage. He had pressed them directly into the flames. Not for warmth, for sensation. Because by then, the hypothermia would have been telling him he was burning alive. High above, the cedar's branches were snapped off as high as 5 meters up. Someone had climbed that tree. In the dark. In freezing temperatures with no coat, they climbed to look back at the slope, whatever they saw, or whatever was up there. We don't know. Between the cedar and the tent. 3 more, Igor Dyatlov, face up. Hands clenched to his chest, jacket hanging open. Zinaida Kolmogorova, face down, frozen mid-climb, still fighting up the slope when death took her. Rustem Slobodin, with a hairline fracture in his skull, minor. Investigators said, incidental. Hypothermia killed all 3. They had tried to go back. Whatever had driven them out of the tent, they had waited it out. And then they had tried to return for their gear. They didn't make it, but it was what was found in the ravine that changed the entire Nature of this case: the final 4 bodies weren't recovered until May, when the snowmelt opened a frozen ravine 75 meters from the cedar tree. They had been buried under 4 meters of compressed ice. Let's step back from the mountain for just a second. If you're the type of person who needs answers to the mysteries the world tries to bury, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe to lock your spot for the next case. Trust me, you won't want to face that one alone. Alright, now, back to the story. Alexander Kolevatov had frozen to death. He was wearing clothing that had been cut from the corpses of those who died at the cedar tree. He had been adapting, improvising, surviving, until he couldn't. But the other 3, Lyudmila, Dubinina, the woman who once skied 50 kilometers on a damaged leg without a word of complaint, was found kneeling against a rock face. Both sides of her ribcage had been fractured. Not cracked, not stressed, shattered. Medical examiner's assessment was precise. The force required to produce these injuries was consistent with the impact of a high-speed vehicle collision. Her skin showed no external damage whatsoever, no bruising, no surface trauma, no wound you could point to and say there. That's where the force came in. Semyon Zolotaryov, the man who had survived the entire Eastern Front, bore identical injuries. Crushed chest, no external marks. He still had his camera hanging around his neck. In deadly cold, with no coat, with a destroyed ribcage, someone, at some point, had made sure that camera stayed with him. Nikolai Thibault-Brignol had suffered a catastrophic collapse of the temporal bone of his skull. Again, no external wound to account for it. And Lyudmila Dubinina was missing her tongue. Both she and Zolotaryov were missing their eyes. The official explanation: post-mortem decomposition. Soft tissue in stream water, investigators said, is consumed first. A scientific answer. A clean answer, except the 4 hikers found above the ravine, exposed to the same conditions, for the same duration, were intact. Ask yourself something. What force on this earth destroys a human ribcage with the energy of a car impact and leaves the skin above it unmarked? Think about the physics. You can create a pressure wave, a force that moves through something. Or you can strike from outside, but then the surface bears it. These are not negotiable principles. They are fundamental, and they do not have exceptions. And yet, the clothing retrieved from Krivonishenko and Dubinina tested positive for elevated radiation. Krivonishenko had worked at a nuclear facility, but that was one man, one set of clothes. The contamination appeared on both of them, across specific garments in specific areas, localized, targeted, without explanation. When the bodies were returned to their families, those who attended the funerals described something that appears in no official report. Personal testimony, passed down from a 12-year-old boy named Yuri Kuntsevich, who attended the services and later devoted decades of his life to investigating this case. The skin of the deceased was a deep, unnatural orange-brown dot, not the gray of hypothermia, not the mottling of decomposition, an orange tan. On people who had been buried in snow. And on the night of February 1st, the night these 9 hikers encountered whatever they encountered, meteorologists, civilians, and military personnel stationed 50 kilometers away, witnessing glowing orange orbs moving silently through the sky above the northern Urals. Those reports were collected. Then they were suppressed. We know this because in 1990, 31 years after the incident, the lead prosecutor, Lev Ivanov, gave a public interview. He confirmed that senior government officials had personally ordered him to bury all evidence relating to the orbs, the military data, and any anomalous findings. He stated that the conclusion of the investigation had been determined before the investigation was complete. He apologized publicly for what he had been made to do. And then there's frame 34, The last exposure on Krivonashenko's camera recovered from the ravine with the rest of his belongings. Every frame before it, normal photographs from the trip. Smiling faces, landscape shots, group portraits. Frame 34 is a flash of something against pure darkness, blurred, angled, shot at a position that suggests the camera was not raised deliberately. As though someone grabbed it in the dark and pressed the shutter, whatever was in front of the lens. Whatever they needed to document in that moment is indistinguishable. So, what actually happened on Dead Mountain? 6 serious theories have been advanced across 66 years of study. Not one of them answers every question. The modern official theory, endorsed by a 2021 analysis from Swiss physicists, is a slab avalanche. A dense block of compacted snow breaks loose while the hikers sleep, strikes the tent, and causes the catastrophic internal injuries seen in the ravine group. It explains the desperate exit. It explains the abandoned gear. The problem, when searchers arrived in February 1959, the ski poles surrounding the tent were still standing, undisturbed. An avalanche powerful enough to shatter rib cages and collapse skulls would not leave ski poles standing. And the slope showed no debris field. Infrasound, panic, low-frequency sound waves generated by wind moving over the specific geometry of Kholat Syakhl can trigger overwhelming, irrational dread in the human nervous system, disorientation, hallucinations, the overwhelming need to flee. It explains the calm footprints. It explains the abandoned tent. It does not explain what crushed those rib cages. The theory that serious researchers keep circling back to, the one that makes institutions uncomfortable, is Soviet military testing. Parachute mines, weapons designed to detonate at altitude and propagate a pressure wave capable of causing severe internal trauma at a distance. They leave no external wounds. They create light in the sky. They can contaminate surrounding material with radiation. And they would explain completely why a senior prosecutor was told what conclusion to reach before he began his work. The Mansi were considered and dismissed. They left no footprints, and they actively participated in the search for the missing hikers. Katabatic winds, sudden hurricane-force gusts verified as meteorologically possible over this specific terrain, still don't explain why none of them made it back for their boots. And then there is the possibility that sits at the edge of every analysis, unspoken but present, that whatever was on that slope that night left no footprints at all, that it left no physical trace of itself in the snow, that the only record of its existence is the wreckage it left behind in the bodies of 9 people who were absolutely not prone to panic, and who panicked anyway. The Mansi had a name for what lived on Dead Mountain. They simply called it the thing that did not welcome visitors. And for generations, they had simply, wisely, not gone there. In February 2019, under enormous sustained public pressure from the Dyatlov Foundation, the Russian government reopened the case. The scope of the reinvestigation was restricted, specifically and deliberately, to natural causes only. In July 2020, they announced their conclusion, a slab avalanche. Case closed. The families of all 9 victims rejected it. Yuri Yudin, the only one who walked away, spent 54 years trying to find what the government couldn't, or wouldn't, give him. He visited the site. He reviewed every document he could access. He sat with the investigators. He stared at the photographs. He held the physical diaries his friends had written on the last night of their lives. Before his death in 2013, he left one final statement on the record. I want to know the truth, but I am afraid that the truth is something that even I would not be able to understand. 9 people, 9 sets of footprints walking calmly into killing dark. Internal injuries that should not exist in the bodies they were found in. Radiation with no traceable source. Orange skin. Orange lights in the sky, suppressed by order of the state. A lead prosecutor who spent decades carrying the weight of what he was told to hide. A government that restricted its own reinvestigation to natural causes only, as though they already knew what it wasn't, and needed the record to say something else. The slope has been renamed. It is called Dyatlov Pass now. There is a marker where the tent stood. People leave flowers when they visit and every year. On the night of February 1st, it is reported, quietly, by those who go up there, that lights appear over the ridge of Dead Mountain. Pale, silent, drifting. No one has explained them. So here is what I need you to sit with tonight. 9 of the most experienced, mentally resilient, physically capable mountaineers in the Soviet Union encountered something on that slope that drove them out of their tent with no shoes and no coats in lethal cold. They did not run. They walked calmly to a tree. They built a fire. They died at measured intervals over the course of hours, moving between the tree and the tent like something kept intervening, and whatever it was left no footprints in the snow. It left no trace of itself at all, except in the bodies. Tell me in the comments, what do you think happened on Dead Mountain? Because 66 years have passed. Official verdicts have come and gone. Scientists and detectives and governments have all taken their turn, and the mountain is still not giving anything back, just like it never gave back the 9 hikers of Dyatlov Pass. The mountain might be silent now, but the dark always finds a way to speak. If you want to make sure you can find your way back out of the woods next time, hit subscribe. Drop your theories in the comments below. Sleep well tonight.